We the people of the state of Jefferson, ever mindful of the rights we hold most dear, life, liberty, and property, are compelled to establish this, our new state, for the preservation of these natural, inalienable rights. Our mandate for the protection of life, liberty, and property gives urgent voice to our demand for representation that reflects our needs, our history, our culture, and our moral impervitude. Time has come for 51. This is Terry Rapoza.
And Wynn Carpenter. You're listening to Jefferson State of Mind podcast. Good morning. Today, I'm in here with my friend Janet Chandler. Janet, good morning.
Good morning. I am here and excited to be so.
Cool. Terry's out on assignment, running around doing whatever Terry does best.
And he does it well.
He does it well. So Janet and I are going to do a little bit of coverage on the Constitution for the great state of Jefferson.
A topic that is dear to my heart, of course.
Ditto. Well, why don't you explain how this came about? You and others were putting this together and how long it took and so forth?
Several years ago, we had a meeting in which we started allocating responsibilities to various people involved in Jefferson and trying to assort all of the different jobs that needed to be done, and we got to sign up for those that we thought we would do the best. And one of those was writing the Constitution. So my hand went up for that one. I volunteered. And there were about 50 people who originally said they would like to work on the Constitution. As it progressed, people fell off, and some people simply couldn't meet the demands. It ended up that we spent about a year. Every Saturday morning from 9 to noon, we did it online by phone calls and came up with a Constitution that we were satisfied with for the time. And it has been through many iterations, editing, changes, until we have one that has been approved by the people of Jefferson so far.
And approved by the people from the counties that are working committees.
Exactly.
Okay.
It is not what will be when we become the state of Jefferson. I'm sure that there will be some more amendments and tweakings, but right now it is the best that we have come up with, and it will stand for now.
Where'd you get all the material for the Constitution?
Oh, people's brains. We used other states' constitutions and borrowed heavily from them to give us sort of a guideline. Idaho had a pretty good constitution that we followed. Oregon had some good ideas. Even, I hate to say this, even California has some good ideas that are actually incorporated into our constitution.
Those great ideas that California has, but they just don't use, right? Is that what we abide by?
That's partly true. One of the things that I did take from California and add to the Jefferson one was a statement about the right to privacy.
Okay.
We did not have that, and California did. So we said, okay, California can't be wrong all the time.
There you go.
Put it in.
All right. Well, in our introduction, we heard the part of the preamble. Part of it. Would you mind reciting the preamble, since you and the committee put that all together for us? And we have all the...
We hold most dear, life, liberty, and property, are compelled to establish this, our new state, for the preservation of these natural, inalienable rights. Our mandate for the protection of life, liberty, and property gives urgent voice to our demand for representation that reflects our needs, our history, our culture, and our moral imperative. It is our humble prayer to Almighty God that with this state constitution, we will ensure the representation that will secure these rights to ourselves and our posterity. With this hope, in faith abiding, we the people direct our representatives now and forever that the meaning of this Constitution shall always be adjudicated for the protection of life, liberty, and property of and for the people of the state of Jefferson. Now, please note in there how many times it said life, liberty, and property as our rights. That's basic.
That is basic. Absolutely right. That's beautifully written. I really like that preamble. That's very well done.
Well, again, it took more than one person to put it together, and it took more than one draft to get it there.
Right, yes. Right. Well, it's very well done. Okay, so we're good. Let's just jump off into the. Is there anything else that you wanted to cover on that, or before
not
we
on
get
the
into
preamble, but I just a little anecdote. When we first started talking about the state of Jefferson and working towards it, it was a group effort, and there were many of us who were traveling from county to county and doing town halls and having meetings and going to carnivals and sign-up booths and fairs and collecting signatures and getting things on the ballot and going to Board of Supervisors meetings. And invariably someone would say, "Oh, I really like the state of Jefferson. That's a good idea. When are you going to get it for us?"
Yes.
And that's what we're going to talk about today, somewhat.
Yeah.
It's not when we are going to get something for you. It's when you are going to work hard to get it and keep it.
That's right.
Yes. And as Terry always says, education without action is useless. So it doesn't matter if you know about Jefferson or you know about the Constitution. If you're not doing something, then you might as well go home and eat popcorn and watch a movie.
Yeah, as long as you can.
As long as you can, yes. And with great liberty goes great responsibility.
Absolutely.
So it's up to you, and that's what we're going to talk about today is what is up to you, what is expected of you, because in Jefferson, you are going to be participating far greater in your government than you do in California.
Amen.
In California, they don't want you to participate.
They don't, because then they maintain and always will keep control of us, our money, and whatever we may or may not do.
Yeah, they want you to go home, sit, be stupid and uninformed, and let them do whatever they want.
Yeah, absolutely.
And in Jefferson, it won't work if that's what you do.
That's right. Okay, so also, too, we want to mention, depending on the length of time it takes to get through what we're going to get through today, we could have multiple episodes regarding this information.
Oh, yes. Yeah, we can talk about this forever.
And we want everybody to understand, too, that it's put together and we're presenting this to everybody so they understand where we're headed and what we're thinking and why we're doing what we're doing. And we want you to start understanding the Constitution of Jefferson and the parallels of the federal Constitution as it currently sits. There are parallels in here. And we, like you said, you drafted some information out of the federal Constitution as well and put some in here. So we need to get everybody educated on that. And keep in mind, the federal Constitution is a itty-bitty book.
Little tiny.
Isn't it like 6,500 words?
Oh.
I think it's 6,500 or something like that. It's a very small book, quick read, and it takes some thinking when you read it. Some things you're going to have to really look at and understand as far as the translation of the words and the terms in there. But it's a good document, and it's the rule book for being a sovereign citizen of the great state of Jefferson, and actually the great union that we live in, the United States of America. So it is the rule book that we currently are supposed to be abiding by.
And it always astounds me when you talk to candidates for office and ask them, "Have you read the Constitution?" And they say, "Well, I looked it over last night," or "I have a copy, I just haven't read it yet." And I'm thinking, you dolts.
Yeah.
It's this long.
Right.
Why have you not been looking at it?
Right. Well, if you're gonna take an oath to it, an oath to this one or to the state constitution,
yes.
Either one or both, you need to be able to understand what's in there. You need to know what the rules are before you can take an oath to it.
And if you took an oath and have not read it, then you lied.
That's right.
You have committed perjury because you have no idea if you are going to honor and uphold a constitution that you have no knowledge of.
That's true. Yep, absolutely. Okay, well, let's jump right into what we've got going on here, and we have the information up on the screen so you can follow along with us. And we're going to be talking about all the stuff regarding the Constitution. And can you explain what we're going to be seeing here on the screen versus what's in the Constitution? I mean, how it parallels, and certain things we're going to address, certain things we won't, and why?
Yes.
Okay.
I have gone through and I have picked out those portions of the Constitution in which there should be direct citizen involvement or responsibility. Now, some of the articles and some of the sections don't really lend themselves to what you need to do. So we won't have covered every article, every section, just those in which you are expected to participate in some way or another.
Okay.
So it won't, for instance, Article 1, Section 4 is not there.
Okay.
But, well, it should be.
It says, yeah, that's the one that's instruct your representatives.
Yeah. Maybe because I already covered it.
Okay.
For example, in the preamble, demand representation. That's what the preamble says we are there for.
Yeah.
And direct your representatives. They are your employees. Is there any employer out there who does not tell his employees what he expects from them, what their job is,
I would hope not.
what he wants them to do? Well, there are employees. Why aren't we directing them? Why aren't we in contact with them constantly?
Right.
Giving them guidance.
And doing follow-up.
And yes.
You have to do follow-up, and then if they are not doing what's been instructed, then there's a corrective action that goes with that.
Like firing.
Yeah.
Another one of my pet peeves, everybody is always calling for term limits. We need term limits. Let's get an amendment for term limits. Folks, you have term limits. It's called the ballot box. Vote the bums out.
And
what's wrong with you? Why do you keep voting in people you don't like?
And they can also do a recall.
Yes, they can.
If their term is not very far into it and they're just causing problems or not doing their job, or lying about when they campaigned about something that they got everybody's vote and then they got in there and then they started doing totally the opposite or not doing anything that they said that they were going to do, and they won't respond. I mean, the whole list goes on. There is a way to get rid of them. That's why we have a recall process here in the state of California.
Every employer has the right to fire an employee that is not serving his needs.
Absolutely.
And the people of the county of Shasta have every right to fire an employee.
Yep.
And the Board of Supervisors are our employees.
They are.
And we have every moral and legal right to fire them if we wish.
And that's the way it should be.
And that's how it should be.
Yeah. Just because they get elected in doesn't mean they're in there for life and they can do whatever they want on their whim. Again, it goes back to their representatives. That's what they're supposed to be doing.
And to suggest that the people of Shasta County are doing something wrong by doing a recall is absurd.
Yes.
They're just following the law and the authority given to them.
Yes, and using the process. Exactly. Okay, let's start off on number 1, if you don't mind doing that one.
Okay, Article 1. First of all, we do need to be educated. So read the Constitution. And we're talking about the Jefferson Constitution. You have to read it. You have to know your rights. You have to know what you have been assigned in this Constitution, and you need to force the government to honor them. And we just talked about that. Well, how do you force them? Well, you vote them out if they're not honoring the Constitution, and you recall them. You can do that too. Force them. They have to be held accountable.
Right.
Article 1, Section 2 talks about the guarantee of religious liberty. Make sure that the pastor of your church understands that he is not answerable to the government, only to his God.
Right. And
that means that you need to be independent from government. And that means you should not have a 501c3 or 501c4 or in some way be answerable to a government that can then tell you what you can and cannot preach.
Correct.
So do not fall for, well, we have to have that for tax reasons.
No, you don't.
No, you don't, and you shouldn't.
No.
Because the government should have no say in your religious beliefs, in your religious institutions.
Well, and at their part too, it's their financial component. If they're a 501c3 or C4, they're getting it's a C3 tax deductible funds. So if they're able to receive those funds, then they have to report that, and then the government gets to know who's funding them. And that's none of the government's business.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. So if the church is funded by their parishioners or whatever, that's fine. However they choose to do their funding. So that's up to them. That's not up to the government.
Number 3, freedom of speech. We all bandy this one about, I have freedom of speech. I can say anything I want, unless it offends someone or whatever. And we always hear the old thing, well, you can't yell fire in a crowded theater. Well, yes, you can.
You can.
Of course you can. It's freedom of speech. However, we get to the other side of the coin. If you are going to have these rights, then use them responsibly.
Right.
And yelling fire in a crowded theater where there is a risk of someone getting hurt, then you're not being responsible with your rights, and you can be held to account for any harm or injury done when you abuse your rights.
Yes.
But you still have the right to yell fire. And even they cite some Supreme Court case, and it doesn't even apply. So you do have the right to say anything you want, no matter who is offended. Mm-hmm. But then you have to suffer the consequences of what you've done if you did it irresponsibly. So if it's petitioning, if it's assembling, if it's freedom of speech, use the right responsibly.
Right.
And that's why we lose rights sometimes, is because people have not used them responsibly, and then the government steps in and says, well, then we're going to limit your rights, which they cannot legally do, but they do it just because people say, oh, yes, that was terrible. We need to restrict those. Well, there have to be some regulations on our rights. No.
Why not hold the person that did it accountable?
The person who did it.
That would be the wise thing to do, the most economic thing to do.
Yeah.
And you're not impeding on the rest of our rights.
We have been told that a republic can only work when people are moral and ethical and follow a standard. And that's what you will need to do in the state of Jefferson. We are going to expect morality and ethics and standards. Yes. And it's up to you to abide by them and to make sure that other people abide by them. Don't sit back and let people break the law or do things that are not ethical. Call them on it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
If you see a woman being beaten up in a subway train, don't stand and watch. Oh. We have become nothing more than gazelles on the plains of Africa, watching the lions come in and take each gazelle out. Yeah. Is that what we are? Just herd animals afraid to stand up for our rights?
Sometimes,
that's right.
It appears so.
Yeah. Number 4, there it is. I've got it on mine. I don't know what happened. It disappeared up there. Do you?
Oh, there it is. Oh, when they did he highlighted it.
Oh, it's hiding.
Yeah, so when we did the change to landscape for the screen, it might have popped over there.
Okay.
Okay, good.
Number 4, instruct your representatives. Teach them, guide them, give them direction, tell them what you want. And don't sit back and complain. They're your employee.
Right.
Send them their daily assignment sheet. Tell them what you expect them to do. It's up to you, and don't complain if they don't do what you want, unless you have told them what you want and expect.
Well, keep in mind, too, in Jefferson, the representation and the representative model will be far more conducive to being user-friendly, in that we won't have a senator for every 1 million people. We won't have an assembly person for every 500,000. Our numbers are going to be far lesser than that. So it will be easier to connect with your representative, whoever they are, whether it's Senate, Assembly, Board of Supervisors, whoever. Any one of them, doesn't matter. You need to be able to connect with them and, like you say, articulate your satisfaction or your dissatisfaction with what they're doing and how they're doing it, and remind them of what they took the oath to. If they're veering off the trail there a little bit, if they're staying in line, okay, everything's good, and you don't have to praise them for it because they're doing their job. They're doing what you elected them to do and hired them to do, and what they're getting paid to do. So if they're not, that's when all these things apply. You step in and you start saying, hey, you need to do this, you need to do that, and then see where it goes from there.
It will be a far different dynamic. Mm-hmm. I live in the Intermountain area. We will probably have one representative for the Intermountain area, and it's far easier to connect with that person when you can see them at the aisle in Safeway or waiting at the bank or filling up your tank with gas. They're there. They live amongst you.
Right.
Even now, we have both Dallies who represent our area. Mm-hmm. They don't even live in my county.
Right.
And I don't see them. They're not around. Yeah. And Doug LaMalfa lives several counties away at the federal level. I I can call his office, I can leave a message, I can talk to aides, but that's not the same thing.
That's correct.
Okay, number 5. There it is.
There it is.
Boy, we worked a long time
Yes.
on the right to keep and bear arms, and we didn't leave it to a very brief statement that the federal Constitution does. We have delineated, and read the Constitution and find out about your right to keep and bear arms and the fact that we need a well-regulated militia. But let's back up. Everybody says, just kind of glides over a well-regulated militia. Well, what does well-regulated mean? Does that mean the government comes in and gives you rules? No.
Yep.
It means well-trained. So if you are going to practice your right to keep and bear arms, you'd better make sure that you are well trained in the use and keeping of those arms.
Right.
With the right goes great responsibility, and nowhere more than with keeping firearms.
Right.
So train yourself. Make sure that you have ammunition. Make sure that you know how to load the gun and how to use the gun and how to clean the gun. I figure if you don't know how to clean your weapon,
Right.
you don't have a right to have a weapon.
Yeah. You got to maintain them.
Yeah, that weapon is not going to be usable if it gets full of dust and gunk. And when you fire it, it doesn't work.
Well, the biggest enemy of a weapon is rust. I mean, and if you're not going to clean it and maintain it so it's operable when it's needed, then why would you even have one? It's like anything else. You have to take care of it.
That's right. If you can't clean your weapon, you're not well regulated. You're not well trained. Get together with the other people in your neighborhood. Make sure that you have some sort of common ammunition, that you know how to use each other's weapons, that you know who has them and where they are. It's all part of being responsible for your own safety.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And practice. I know it's so hard in California because you can't get ammunition now.
Yeah.
Yeah. What better way to practice than with some kind of .22 caliber rifle or handgun to just practice? But even .22 ammunition is impossible.
Well, it's expensive
to get.
and it's hard to get. And, the gun shop owners are having a heck of a time getting all the ammo that they need for their customers because of where we live in California. And that to me is one of the biggest problems. Another reason to not think like a Californian, think like a Jeffersonian.
That's right.
You have to quit thinking like a Californian because that's how they pounded it. They pounded all these things into us, they being the government of California, that we've been so beat down with all this garbage and minutia that we need to think like Jeffersonians, where we do have the right to be free. This book here, this book right here tells us what to do. It's regulating the government, not the sovereign citizens.
Exactly.
So,
and think about this. I think there are 2 or 3 places in the Constitution that limit people, and one of them was the 18th Amendment when they took away your right to drink if you wanted to, and it didn't last because it was regulating the wrong person, the wrong group. It was people, not government. I have a family member who lives in the city, and when he comes up to Bernie, he makes sure to go out and practice shooting. And oh my gosh, I would not want to be on the other side of his sights because he's not going to miss. And he makes sure that the other members of his family also go with him and practice and stay familiar with the weapons.
Yeah.
So that if there is a problem, they will be able to protect themselves.
Well, he should be doing that all the time because of where he lives. If he lives in the city, things are more apt to happen there than they ever would be happening where you live.
That's right. That's right. And they also have a family plan for getting to safety in case something does happen.
And always should do that.
Yeah. Whether it's a civil event or a natural event, they know where to go. They have things planned and ready to take with them. With liberty goes great responsibility.
Absolutely. And if preparation, you have to be prepared. If you're not prepared for all these unknowns, because we never know when they're going to hit, if they're going to hit, but if it does and you're prepared, that takes all the scramble out of what else you're going to do. If you're prepped, just throw stuff in whatever you need to get going, and then if there's anything else extra, you can grab the extra. It allows you time to do that.
Yeah, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. If I have 5 minutes, this is what I grab. If I have another 5 minutes, then I go to tier 2. If I have 2 hours, then we go to tier 3.
Yep.
I live in the Intermountain area, and it's prone to fires.
Yep.
And we have learned to be prepared and to have certain things in the summertime just packed in the car.
You're right.
Things I can't afford to lose.
That's right. That's right.
Okay, our rights. Number 6, unreasonable searches and seizures. We're always talking about in the federal Constitution, Amendment 4, your Fourth Amendment rights. Do you know what they are? Do you know what that means? It says that they have to give you a warrant in order to arrest you, in order to search you, in order to seize your property. How many people demand to see and read the warrant before any of these things happen?
Well, typically what you see on the movies is they hand it to them as they're walking in.
Yeah.
I mean, so that's what you see. We're conditioned because that's what happens on the movies, and we've all seen that. So it's got to be right? I was at the scene of an incipient arrest, and the officers came to the door and said, "We have a warrant for the arrest of this person." And they did not have a warrant. They had an abstract. They had a document that said a warrant exists. But the abstract did not list the crime or where it took place. Wow.
Or none of the details. It just said the warrant exists and we are duly authorized to arrest this person based on a warrant that exists in another county.
So shouldn't they have, at the very least, a copy of that warrant?
Wouldn't you think? Yes.
Good grief. And so they go in and do that and put themselves into danger, put other people into danger over something that they could be held accountable to for, to me, that's lying.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, point blank, it's lying.
Yeah. A warrant exists. How do you know? Have you seen it? No, it's in another county.
Holy smoke.
So always demand to see and read warrants before honoring them. If someone's going to come in and search your home, they better have a warrant, and you have a right to read it and make sure that all of the information is there on that warrant.
Right.
Does it list your address? Does it list the things that they are looking for, which would exclude anything else? Is it signed by a judge? Make sure that it's all done. That's your obligation as a citizen, to make sure that the government is obeying the rules.
I've never seen a warrant, so it'd be interesting. I'll have to look one up and see what they look like and understand, not that I'm expecting anything,
Right,
but
yeah.
just, for a person that if I got served one, I wouldn't know what I'd be looking at. So again, I need to learn. So I need to know what I'm going to be dealing with should we have an issue at some point. Hopefully never, but I mean, I'm just saying, for just to be prepared. Just to be prepared. Be prepared
yes.
to understand.
We have given our government the right to use warrants. We'd better know what they are and what they look like and how they should be used.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's not just a tool for government. It's a tool for us, too, to be protected.
Well, so that way you know what to read and what to look for, and then if something isn't on there, or heck, they could have the wrong name on there.
Exactly.
I mean, they could
or the wrong address.
Wrong address. I mean, the whole thing. I mean, things happen, and they're only human as well, and they go in and get ready to go do something. You would think that they go through the protocol and processes, which I'm sure they do, but things happen, and so yeah, you want to be prepared and safe, because in those situations it could get ugly.
Yes.
At times. So you just want to be safe for everybody in your household and for the law enforcement who's at the door. You want to be prepared.
Even if law enforcement just comes to the door, or some agency comes to the door and says, "Oh, we've got a complaint. Do you mind if we come in and look around?" And of course the response is, you may certainly come in and look around if you have a Fourth Amendment warrant signed by a judge, supported by an affidavit, and there's probable cause. By all means, give me that and you may come in. Otherwise, no.
Right.
And just don't be afraid to say no and why. And if you show some level of knowledge about what's going on, you probably will intimidate law enforcement.
There you go. And that's just it. You have to know the rules.
And you should intimidate law enforcement if they are not doing their job properly.
That's correct.
They are, again, your employees, and they have to obey the rules.
That's right. That's right.
Juries. Juries are a big joke. We all don't want to serve on juries. And if you do avidly want to serve on a jury, then there's something wrong with you and you shouldn't. The standard joke is, do you want someone on your jury who was too stupid to get out of jury duty? Well, it's kind of a broad brush.
Yes.
But we should all want to serve on juries. We should want to do it for the right reasons. And that's because we want to see justice done and we want to participate in our government. But you should never serve on a jury unless you are aware of the concept of nullification. And if you don't know about jury nullification, then you should not serve on a jury because you are not informed.
Right.
And judges and courts are not going to tell you about nullification.
They will not. You're absolutely right.
And nullification, for those of you who don't know, means that as a juror, you are not only a trier of the facts, you are a trier of the law. Is the law correct, accurate, and fair? If I follow the law, will I come up with a just decision? And if the answer is no, then you say, I cannot find this person guilty because the law is defective. And that's nullification. My husband was called for jury duty, and by the luck of the draw, he actually had his number drawn and he was questioned by the judge. And the judge said to every person that was called forth, do you promise to decide this case on the law as I give it to you? And of course, the appropriate response is no. No, I'm not doing it on the law as you give it to me. I'm doing it on the law as I see fit as a juror. And my husband answered, no, I have the right to nullification. And as soon as my husband said the word nullification, the judge turned to both attorneys and said, I think we can dismiss Mr. X, Mr. Chandler.
Yep.
And thank you very much for your service. And they had him out of there before anybody could even say, nullification, what was he talking about? Boy, he was out of there. There was no question. They did not want him on a jury.
They want him nullified.
They wanted him nullified. And it was, of course, interesting. Yeah.
Made him scramble. It's always good.
Yeah.
It's always good when you make the employees scramble.
That's right.
Don't forget, the judges are the employees as well.
They are.
Everybody forgets that.
Yeah.
They put them on these pedestals. It's like, no. They're our employees. They are voted in by us for the most part. Most of them are.
Yep.
And they're paid by us.
Yep.
And they're serving at the pleasure of us. They serve at the pleasure. I mean, if they're not going to be doing their job properly and right, we can also get rid of them. So don't think that anybody's above being removed from their position.
And even at the Supreme Court level, at the state Supreme Court level,
right,
we have had a case in which I think it was 3 Supreme Court judges were voted out of office.
There we go.
Because they were not doing their job. And it was almost unheard of, but it happened and it worked. And they were terrible judges, awful.
And that's the way it should be. If they're not doing their job, right, and they're really being counterproductive to the system and to the people that they serve, then they should be removed.
That's right. And
absolutely.
They were. And the Supreme Court justice, the main one was Rose Bird.
Oh, I remember hearing. Yeah.
Way back, probably before you were born, but I remember it well.
Yeah, I remember hearing about it.
And she was removed from office because she was such an awful judge.
Wow.
That was under Jerry Brown his first time around.
Okay. Well, there you go.
Yeah. Okay, your rights. If you don't honor and protect your rights, you're not going to have them. And on number 12, we're talking about guarantees and due process of law. One thing I want you to learn to do when dealing with law enforcement and our criminal justice system is learn to shut up. Just
be quiet.
Yeah, just don't say anything. You're not obligated. Oh, look at the big kerfuffle that happened with the case back, he said in Indiana, the poor kid who's being charged with murder.
Oh, Wisconsin.
Wisconsin. Yeah, being charged with murder, and shoot, just lost my train of thought. I'll get back to it. Anyway, don't waive any of your rights. Mm-hmm. If someone questions you, just say, oh, that was it. The prosecutor was really lighting into this poor kid because he didn't say anything. He wouldn't testify against himself. And the prosecutor was using that as evidence of guilt. And the judge lit into the prosecutor and said, you know darn well you can't do that in a court. Any court, especially my court. You can't impugn guilt to someone for honoring their Fifth Amendment rights not to testify against himself. Right. It was a big issue. Mm-hmm. It's a big enough issue that the defense side could call for a mistrial. It was that serious. You don't have to say anything. And in many cases, you shouldn't.
Right.
I don't know how many of you are movie watchers. There's a movie, Jack Reacher, Never Look Back. Mm-hmm. And in one case, he is brought before a group of prosecutors, and they are questioning him, and he just remains silent. He says nothing. And say, why aren't you saying anything? He says, because you told me I had the right to remain silent. And he knew his rights, and he was not going to help them prosecute him.
There you go.
So don't you do it either. A very good, if law enforcement wants to question you about something, and you're not sure just where this is going, ask them, are you investigating a crime?
Yeah.
Am I a suspect in that crime? Then I decline to talk to you about this crime or incident or whatever without an attorney being present.
Absolutely.
Just use your rights. They can't use them against you.
Shouldn't.
Use them. Yeah.
Shouldn't.
Don't waive any of your rights. A right to a speedy trial. I was sitting in night court one time, and a gentleman came in, and it was a traffic violation, and the officer did not show up to testify against him.
Okay.
So we all know what happens when an officer does not show up. There's the witness. There's no case.
Right.
And the judge said to the man, sir, you have two choices. I can dismiss the case right now for lack of a witness testimony, or you can waive your right to a speedy trial, and we can reset this to another date and resubpoena the officer to show up. Oh, I cannot tell you how frustrating it was when that gentleman said, well, okay, I'll waive my rights. And, no, just say no, and you walk out free. And I blame the judge in that case because I think the judge could have steered the man better.
Did he not have the mental capacity to understand? I mean, and that's the thing too. Maybe, he was off a little bit that...
He was well enough intelligenced. He just didn't know how the system works.
Right.
So you better know how the system works, because if you do, it can work for you instead of against you.
Well, and the language too, we're going to set it up for a speedy trial. Okay, well, they're going to help me.
Yeah.
Maybe he was thinking that way. You just never know what people are thinking at the moment because he's stressed. He's in court. He made the time to be there. The cop didn't show up. Oh, I don't know why he's not here. Okay, well, so I guess I need to have a speedy trial. So, okay, I'm waiving my rights to do so. No.
Yeah. You've got to know the system.
Right.
It's your system. You pay for it.
Right.
Don't be ignorant.
Right. Wow.
Another one, we have very good hunting and fishing rights in Jefferson. Mm-hmm. But again, they won't last unless you use them responsibly. It's up to you to be moral and ethical when it comes to your rights. Don't abuse the rights to hunt and fish. Mm-hmm. Don't go out there and take every last salmon out of the river. Don't shoot the last passenger pigeon. Do it responsibly.
Right.
Remember that you are a part of nature, and you also have have neighbors and friends and fellow citizens who have the same rights that you do. Use your rights responsibly.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I have coveys of quail around my house. I have squirrels. I have deer that wander through. And my grandson knows that anything around Grandma's house or nearby is not fair game.
You have to hunt elsewhere.
I hunt elsewhere. Those deer are my friends. Yeah. And on number 18, it goes along with it too. There is just a limited amount of water. Mm-hmm. And we're always going to be fighting over the allocation of water. Mm-hmm. So do it responsibly. Don't try to take every last drop and so your neighbor downstream doesn't get his allotment. Cooperate.
Right.
The last thing we want to do is bring government into our squabbles. Learn to settle them without going to court.
Right.
Be cooperative. Compromise. You will be far better served by working with your neighbors instead of working against them in court.
And it's more affordable. If you can have some open dialogue, and if you end up disagreeing on something, give it some time. You go back at it and talk and so forth and work it through, because going to court only creates more hostility. You're spending money, boatloads of money, to do it. And why do that? Why do that to yourself and to your neighbor?
And there's an old axiom: if you take it to court, nobody is ever satisfied with the verdict.
That's true.
It's always a compromise that the two parties did not come to. It was a third party that it came to a compromise, and nobody goes away happy.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, if you want to go with the wisdom of Dr. Phil, he always tells parents who are squabbling over custody rights, don't get the government involved. Settle this between yourselves. You will not be happy if you take your custody battle to court, because you could both lose.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and oftentimes they do.
And they do.
Yeah, and who's the biggest loser? The children.
The children. And
always.
And in the case of water or property rights, the people who own the water and the property are going to be the big losers, because the government really wants your water and your property. It doesn't want to allocate it fairly.
And the thing is, why does the government want our water or the water? Why does the government? The government is we the people. And we have people hired and elected to work in government capacity, but what gives them the responsibility and what gives them the, I guess, the ability to dictate to us how it's going to be used? You know, keeping the dams flowing, I get that. And some of them were created because of flooding issues. You know, like Shasta Dam, it was built for water retention and for flooding issues. I mean, Redding used to flood annually all the way down to Sacramento. Right. All the way down to the Delta. It would flood annually coming through from Redding and then also from Oroville and Folsom. You just think about all that water going through all that area. Sacramento wouldn't exist. You know, if it kept getting washed out, people would be tired of rebuilding.
Well, flooding is what makes the farmland valuable. It lays down silt.
Yes.
The Aswan Dam in Egypt was a prime example of that. As soon as they blocked the silt, then they had to put fertilizer on their fields.
Yeah. There you go.
Again, number 20. Don't expect somebody else to do your fight for you, to take care of you. Unions have outlived their usefulness. They are no longer there to make sure that you have good working conditions. They are there to make sure that you pay your union dues, and then they can use those dues for their political advantage.
Right. So as a right to work, you have a right to work, but then you also have a right to be terminated.
That's right. And you have a right to work with your employer if you think conditions are not safe.
Absolutely.
Or not adequate. And get together as a group and deal with your employer on your own. Don't expect a union to do it for you.
Right, right.
I refused to join the teachers' union because I saw where the union dues was going. And that was not exactly where I wanted my dollars to be spent.
Absolutely.
Number 21, we have in our Constitution something that does not exist within the California Constitution, and that is medical rights.
Interesting.
This was an argument early on about whether we needed it. And the argument is we already have the rights to life, liberty, and property. And of course, your body is your most personal property. And we don't need to put in there any more statements about your rights for your personal property, because then that just becomes an arguable issue.
Right.
And then COVID happened.
Hello.
Yeah. And suddenly it became extremely important to actually delineate property rights when it came to your body. Now, we could use the same argument for the Federal Bill of Rights. What if we had said, well, obviously, you have these rights. We don't need to list them. And we didn't have a Bill of Rights that told about the right to freedom of speech and religion and petition and assembly and the right to keep and bear arms. What if those weren't actually listed? Then we'd look a lot like Australia.
Absolutely. Because if it's not there, they're not going to be able to take it away. I mean, if it's not there, they can do whatever they want, they being the tyrannical part of the government. And so what happens then, if at least it's there, it's in the playbook. It's in there, and it says that they meaning the government, the tyrannical government, can't take them away from you, the rights. Whatever they are. It's restricting the government, not restricting sovereign citizens. And
remember, this is probably a good time to throw it in. The Constitution does not give anybody any rights whatsoever.
That's correct.
Your Creator has given you your rights. And that's what it says in the Declaration of Independence. We are endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights. And inalienable means they cannot be taken away.
That's correct.
So the Constitution just recognizes that you have these rights and government cannot take them away.
That's right. Absolutely.
So it irks me a bit when people talk about their constitutional rights. No, it's constitutionally recognized rights.
And they're protected.
They're
absolutely protected. That's why they're in here.
Yeah.
Protected from the government, the tyrannical part of the government that's going to try to take them away or limit them or whatever, use them against you.
And that's why we put in Article 1, Section 21. It says specifically that our bodies are our personal property, and all adults have the inherent right and complete authority to make medical decisions concerning their own bodies. These decisions include, but are not limited to, the use or refusal of medical treatments and procedures, tests, injections, vaccines, drugs, supplements, and remedies.
Kind of lists it all out there, doesn't it?
Yes. So you cannot be forced to take a vaccine, but neither can you be denied the right to use hydroxychloroquine or zinc or vitamin C or whatever you wish. Along with that, frankly, goes the right to use marijuana if you wish.
There you go.
It's your body.
It's your body.
You can do whatever you like. I hate the smell of marijuana. I've never smoked marijuana. I am not a drug user at all. But if you want to, it's your body.
There we go.
And there is no place in the Constitution that says, I have the right to dictate what you do with your body.
That's right. Well, and that's the way it should be.
And that's how it should be.
Absolutely. Because it comes back to responsibility. If you're going to do things that are like that, then you're going to be responsible for the results of using.
Yes, and where your rights end is the place where my rights begin. And so you do not have the right to get in a car and drive while you're high.
Right.
Because you are infringing on someone else's rights.
Right.
It's a balancing act. It always is. It always will be. That's why it's a republic. We have a rule of law. We have this thing of the people, and it takes constant tweaking and compromising and balancing.
Absolutely.
Number 26. Political power is inherent in the people. Be prepared to carry out the duties that are listed in 26. This means that you have the political power, then use it. You have the right to possess, secure, and use your own property. Stand up for yourself.
Right.
Don't let government take over. when any government violates your rights, you have the right to alter, reconstitute, or abolish that government. That's not just your right, it's your duty. It is your obligation. Do not be afraid of it. Do not back down. It is what is expected of you as a free person. And that's part of the problem with where we are now.
Right.
We have not stood up for ourselves. We have been lazy.
Well, do you think it's because of, I'm just going to say it, being ignorant to the law, being ignorant to the constitutional rights that we do have?
Absolutely.
I mean, it's ignorance by not being taught in school, by not being part of life. I mean, because the only time people hear about the Constitution or even have any inkling about it is when something goes against them. Not against you or you, but against them. Hey, wait, they're stepping on my rights. What are your rights? I don't know, but they're stepping on them. Well, see, that's the thing. They need to know.
And the same thing,
They need to know.
when they came for my neighbor, I hadn't done anything like that, so I didn't stand up.
Yeah.
And when they come for you, there's nobody left to stand up.
Right.
So we all need to go back retroactively and stand up. And it's pretty hard to rein in a government that has become out of control.
Absolutely.
And it isn't necessarily their fault. That's what governments do, and that's what bureaucracies do. It's our fault, because we all should know that the price of liberty is eternal vigilance, and we have not been vigilant. We let it go. We sat back and enjoyed our new TVs and our new iPhones, and for several decades, we have not been doing what free people are supposed to do, and that is to guard our freedom.
Well, and we're entrusting those freedoms with people who we hire through the ballot box, and then we get all upset about it when things go wrong, but we're not the ones, like you say, being diligent about that and watching what's going on. I mean, you have to do that. You question things, question everything. You might not get the answers you like, but they might be the right answers. And if you get answers that you don't like and they are the wrong answers for what's going against the federal constitution and the state constitution, then you need to do some work. And that's where this all came about.
That's right.
This whole process of being the state of Jefferson and separating from the state of California, that is why we want to separate, because California has done that to us all for years, for decades. For over 50, maybe even 60 years, they've been doing it to us that we know of for sure, but even longer, most likely.
And it's been incremental, bit by bit, drip, 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 until we find ourselves where we are.
Right.
And California is just exemplified in Section 26. That's the reason that we need to do something.
Absolutely.
If everybody took an oath right now not to vote for an incumbent, we would have term limits.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry, you did a great job, but I'm not voting for an incumbent. Mm-hmm. And if you knew that you were not going to be voted for as an incumbent, maybe you wouldn't run and someone else would run.
Yeah.
If it meant voting for the Democrat instead of the Republican, or the vice versa, the Republican instead of the Democrat, there's term limits right
Absolutely.
there. And if people knew that they were going to be shuffled on out, I don't know, maybe they wouldn't run in the first place. Maybe they would be really bad, but at least you'd only have to put up with them for 2 or 4 years.
Well, that's just it. Some of these people that get in, they know the system. They've been part of the system, either underlying or somehow. They know what's going on. So their hope is to get in the door, and they're going to do these things. They're going to say one thing just to get the votes, and once they get in, they're going to do everything else that they want to do. It's their agenda, or people that are supporting them to get in there to make things happen in their district or their area of representation, that they're going to grease the palms of people who support them. So they're going to be the voice. They're going to be the vote that gets everything that they need to get on that team of a board, if you will, to be the radical one to make things happen. And we're suffering those consequences for that. I mean, we have that here locally. That's why we're doing a recall here locally.
That's right.
That's exactly why we're doing that, because we know, and more exposure keeps coming out when you look at the funders of these people. It's not grassroots. It's for some of these people, it's never been grassroots. They've always been funded by individuals that are, it's just self-serving. They're doing everything they can so they can be the top dog in the community, so that they can truly line their pockets with cash, and the taxpayers are funding that. We, the taxpayers, are funding that, and it's very disheartening. It's very frustrating. So if we can remove them by having term limits, by voting them out, by not voting for incumbents, I'm all for that.
It's a step forward. I am in favor of re-electing people who are doing a truly good job.
Sure.
But if I had my choice between keeping in people who are doing a good job and just flat no incumbents, I'd go with no incumbents. At least it sends a message.
Right.
And I do believe that we have had dynasties created, and people who get in there, and then they say, well, if without term limits, then the bureaucracy just takes over. Well, then limit the bureaucracy.
Right.
Take away the power of the bureaucracy to make regulations and rules that are not law.
Well, and are they not constitutional?
That's right.
I mean, just because we have law doesn't mean it's lawful. I mean,
it's maybe legal, but not lawful. And there is a difference.
There is a huge difference.
Yeah.
And if it goes against the rule book.
That's right. Yeah. It all goes back to that.
If it goes against the rule book, then you don't do it. You don't vote for it. You vote against it. You don't even bring it up.
There was a meme online. You may have seen it. It was Jen Psaki saying that, well, we all know that federal law takes precedence over state law, and just shows her ignorance because it's simply not true.
That's correct.
10th Amendment, folks, you better look it up. Make sure you know what that means. Yeah. And which brings us to 27. Familiarize yourself with both the federal and state constitutions.
Absolutely.
How do you know what rules are if you don't know them?
Right.
Understand the definitions and the concepts, and get an 1828 Webster's Dictionary. That was the terminology on which the constitutional terms were based. So know what those terms mean. Understand the federal and state agencies and make sure that they all honor the 10th Amendment.
Absolutely.
It is the protection of the states. And of course, they had to demonize it. So anytime you mention states' rights and 10th Amendment, you're called a racist and you just want slavery to be back. And it has nothing to do with slavery and racism.
Right.
It has to do with the protection of the states. And look into what happened to the protection of the states with the Constitution when they voted in the amendment that allowed for popular election of senators at the federal level rather than state selection. It took away the power of the state.
Right.
And we're still suffering from that.
Yep.
If you don't know what sovereign republic means, find out. We are a sovereign republic. Every state is. And when we say the Pledge of Allegiance and we say one nation under God, indivisible, no. We are 50 nations under God, and we are divisible. I don't care what happened with the Civil War.
Right.
The Declaration of Independence tells us that we can divide.
That's right.
And when it comes to the legislature, make sure that any law that is proposed shows a nexus, a connection between the proposed law and your enumerated rights and the enumerated powers given to government. If they don't have the authority or the power to do something, don't let them do it. And if they go ahead and do it anyway, then just declare it to be nullified.
There you go.
It's invalid, it's void.
Yeah.
And that pretty much takes us through Article 1. Wow, we only have 13 left.
Yes. So we're going to hit the rest, and some of the others are much shorter.
Yes.
They're much shorter. The first article is a lengthy one, so we got to cover that one today. So we're going to thank you, Janet, for coming in today.
Of course.
And we definitely will have you back to hit the rest of this and get the education of people out there. You can also hit or go online to soj.org. And
SOJ51?
SOJ51.org.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Thank you.
Yeah.
SOJ51.org, and find the Constitution on there, and you can load it up and print it out, and you can see what we've been talking about. And so when we come back next time, you'll be able to have an understanding as to the explanation as what we're doing and why we're doing it.
Good. And what your responsibilities are.
That's right. Well, thank you again, Janet. We really appreciate it.
Thanks.
The time has come.
For 51.
Amen.
Hey, CA, come out and play. Have you seen the bill we all have to pay? It's not our bill, we had no say. You don't serve us, you serve LA. The time has come for 51 in a Jefferson state of mind. You don't know us, you have no clue, and still you're telling us what to do. We don't know you or what you face. It's time to start a brand new state. The time has come for 51 in a Jefferson state of mind. Jefferson state of mind, carved from lessons we all learned through time. And to my new state, I will always be true. She's gonna shine in the red, white, and blue. It's really better off this way. The welfare you won't have to pay. You keep your royal pedigree. All we're asking is set us free. The time has come for 51 in a Jefferson state of mind. And in the end, it's very clear, anything that we hold dear will never see the light of day with California run this way. The time has come for 51. The time has come for 51. The time has come for 51 in a Jefferson state of mind. In a Jefferson state